and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. So hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to this video today with me, where we will be taking a deeper look into the integration of what it means to be within the alignment of the cosmic Christ. What is the cosmic Christ seating on our planet beyond the seating of the Christos energy on Earth? So I will be talking about a further emphasis on this topic because I've talked about the galactic history of the humankind a lot before. But in this video, I will take you through this higher perspective of what this truly means. Also the perspective of how the other influences within our solar system and beyond, and what are some of the links that are linking the human integration process and taking it into the next steps. Because there were certain learning periods for the human race before they could enter what is called the galactic era. So I want to first talk about this book again, which is called The Heart of the Christos, the star seeding from the Pleiades, from Barbara Hand Clough, because this book is simply an amazing, a brilliant writing that also brings a higher perspective on what we call the interaction of the humans and the so-called gods, those that came here, you know, from the skies, from the above, and that have interacted with the planetary origin of the humankind and the history of our earthly ancestry. So I want to take you further into this understanding, and then we'll read some impasses or paragraphs from this book, because I've marked some of them with double exclamation points as being very interesting and holding this perspective and giving some of the keys for further illumination on that topic. So, as you know, this understanding that the bringing of the heart of the Christ, which is the awakening of our illumined nature on the planet, has gone through many layers and many stages, especially relating to the cycles of earth evolution, which were directly linked with the cycles of the interplay of the dynamics of how higher versions or stellar selves would be expressing or having this dance lived out here on the planet Earth, and how this would then become a greater galactic library for other schools of training, for other planetary systems and other evolution of worlds. And why this is so important is because in Earth's history, we've gone through simply all of the patterns that are, you know, were needed to experience so that the higher levels of light could truly become embodied eventually. So we all know the interaction of what we call the planet Nibiru, or the planets where those who are called the gods, or the abode of the gods, have come from, and how their conscious interactions have been playing out with humans on Earth. And in this book, you actually have such a beautiful walkthrough through this experience, so that it presents a higher understanding how this interaction actually played out, and how this is involved with the seeding of the Christ here on this planet. And I want to talk about some things before I present you a little bit of that information as well. In order for the heart of the Christ to truly develop within the human nature, or within the human body, through the human consciousness expansion and evolution into the greater levels of being, there needed to be certain points where energy was implemented as, you know, we know that as the teaching and the learning within each age, and the principles that that age has brought. But I want to present you something that Spirit has shown me, a bigger picture of what we call the planet Nibiru and its influence, because the trajectory of this planet orbits differently, because it functions on galactic time. So it travels between our own solar system and the star Sirius, and then comes back, and it has an elliptical curve or of its movement. And therefore this planet, from a higher perspective, has always been linked with Earth in a way that many people don't understand. So we've based our experiences or memories that are still coming up, and we call these beings archons, you know, galactic gods, whatever it is. But these different names, a lot of them are resurfacing from our own human ancestry memory of our interactions with these beings. But until we realize what the nature of this purpose was and how it's serving the evolution of the planet and moving into its next stage of transition so that we can open to a galactic age, because in a way, this planet has always been a link, is bringing forth the energy and preparing the cycles of human life to enter a bigger cycle and to enter what we know as galactic time, or the no time. So there was an influence of both, and there were interactions, and what we now know as the establishment that were kind of coming as a co-creation with these gods and what they've, you know, created as demigods when there was an interaction of interbreeding process. A lot of it is held within the record memory. A lot of it is held in the memory of humans and how we still interact to those forms of life, although not all of them are as they appear to be on the outside, which means how we interpret them. So until we as humans are ready to wake up to the bigger picture and see the galactic nature of the purpose of the interplay of Earth and Nibiru and, you know, the whole solar system and beyond, because it's a way of entering a bigger stellar or galactic highway so that humans could activate their own stellar selves. And you can't experience the galactic embodiment without the integration of your stellar self. It's simply not possible. So in a way, Nibiru has served as a link. And because a lot of it is still interpreted negatively, because of course a lot of interactions were coming from a fallen and egoic principles and templates and imprints, and as humans still hold a lot of negative memory associated with that. But what I witness a lot of times in the human behavior is how judgment is placed there, and as it's also shared in this book, until we have judgment of all the co-created darkness and all the systems of enslavement and masses of leadership and then following, it's not based on love. You know, as great Krishnamurti said, when you are in love, you have no need for rulership or leadership, because love does not need to lead. It's a state of this cultivating inner richness of spirit that is self-sufficient, it's sovereign, and it does not need to impose its own majesty upon the great majesty of anything or anyone else, because it's sovereign in its own nature and its own spirit domain. So what is happening now is that a lot of the systems that came as an interaction or co-creation between Earth and Nibiru, or humans and those which we've called gods, basically they weren't gods, we've called them that way. They were simply beings of a different dimensional and different template of existence. So the way we interpret them a lot of times was coming from our own fallen perspective, because humans weren't developed enough. So we've looked at that from our own perspective, and we've created distortions just as well. The interaction was, again, remember, in the nature of duality, there's always a dual response. It's an intermingling process. So now I witness so many people blaming those which we call gods, blaming and seeing Nibiru as in a negative light. But a lot of the aspect of the Nibiruan High Council also comes from an illumined perspective, because it has also experienced its own evolution and it's still experiencing it. So remember, within any system of worlds, there's always different levels of dimensional expansion. It all comes from your own integrated consciousness, because whatever we're still experiencing is outside of ourselves, and we're blaming that system, or we're blaming that structure within our society, and we're blaming whatever it is, and we're finger pointing. I'm going to give you one example just now as I'm talking about this, so you can see what I'm actually talking about here. It's still coming from the perspective that there's something out there that's influencing us, and there's something out there that has the power over our own Christ nature, and that there's something that we are still willingly giving power to. I'm going to give you this example just recently because I've shared this video and a topic about co-creating universal abundance as a state of our own financial and, of course, basically life force interdependence and interdependence as well, because we are all connected and co-created. So sometimes people who are unaware, because they haven't seen the bigger picture, they're not seeing things within a higher perspective yet, they're still holding fingers and blaming others. And let's say someone talks about these things and they instantly see them or what's coming from them as the force of that triggering, as the instigator force, but that person has nothing to do with it. Personally, I have nothing to do with that, because I think someone sent me this picture of what money truly is. You know, it's like a corporeal whatever. We all know that. It's not about that. what Spirit is showing me, and I've always told you that, is we as humans, we can't develop to the next stage of evolution if we don't truly evaluate everything that we've actually co-created within the system. So that wasn't just enforced upon us. And of course, there was a lot of manipulation, there was a lot of distortion, but it was never enforced upon us because, like it's stated here in this book, humans, even now with the withdrawal of the gods, are still experiencing this consciousness memory where they themselves are still playing out this constant victimization. And the thing is, the victimization on Earth is one cycle of experience, but there were also many cycles because we have these parallel experiences as multidimensional beings. And when your experience of victimization on Earth will be transcended, you will still have to go and move into working with the victimization within the stellar frequencies of the greater galactic proportions. So you will still witness aspects of that reflected to you because there's galactic memory we're holding as well in our records, not just our Earth memory, because of these interlinking processes that link us to, it's not just the planets in our solar system and Nibiru, it's, you know, who is a link between our solar system and the star Sirius, and then Sirius acting as a gateway to other dimensions as well. So in a way, everything is interconnected, everything is interlinked, but until humans acknowledge every aspect within themselves, they can move forward. So let's take money as one example, right? I've shared with you recently what I've came across as a knowledge and an offering within the bigger picture, that when we see and value money differently, and we don't see money just as that force of manipulation that, you know, is enslaving us to just providing for our basic needs, when we start applying percentages of that life force essence, because it's not money itself, it's how we structure, it's a tool, it's a physical tool, it's something physical, and things of the physical nature are giving us the mirrors that we as conscious beings, sometimes people who are still evolving within becoming illumined themselves, sometimes need to master. And they take these are given as structures, otherwise they would not even be allowed in this system. Have you ever thought of that? Everything is first encompassed, or it's envisioned within a higher divine plan, and then it's either allowed or not. And people don't see that. They only see the tangible physical result, and they say, well, that's bad and it's manipulated. Yes, but for what reason? And how does it serve you to move through the integration process of your humanness so you can move into greater galactic levels and understanding as well, to for once and for all reclaim your universal consciousness, because that's the basic point, for you to become fully free and illumined within your universal being. So these are aspects. And when you take money as one example, when we start building a template of light within the already structured and laid out template, which we now call financial system on Earth and money, you don't have to become a part of that financial system anymore, the way perhaps you thought that you need to, maybe in the beginning stages, like you get payment, you get wages, or you get salary, you have to work for it, because that was, of course, the basic manipulation. It was, I think it was birthed in Egypt, maybe even before, but it was birthed in terms of, well, human do the labor, you're getting paid, and then you're freed, right? But a lot of the people are not on that level anymore. You can't see these things in that degree. So when the whole central banking system was developed, of course there was so much manipulation and enslavement there, but you can't see only that, and you have to see the evolutionary pathway that serves all souls that need to learn the liberation process. And when they're still experiencing that, means they're still giving life force to that, they're still believing that's the only possibility, they're still somehow within the governing process of their own I am presence needing the experience. And if you are seeing only that as the result of the experience yourself instead of the illumined levels of the bigger picture, then you're not seeing the flow of what these souls are needing to learn and master and integrate so they can move on to higher levels of light. So there's a lot of people who are already experiencing money in a different way. So if you see now, a lot of us have PayPals, and money is becoming less and less of a physical thing, because when you're functioning on a higher level, in my own example, I don't even touch money, I think, anymore physically. I truly don't. I have PayPal, that was the card, and then everything is just like, you can see already that the money is becoming more and more just a flow of energy, because we are already bringing a higher light structure until it's no longer needed, until everything will just be one flow of energy. But you can't judge the system because it still exists, because a few beings who are recalcitrant or reluctant or it's kind of like those souls who are still resisting the process because they're still insisting on infringing upon that system. Okay, so we have to see beyond that. And if someone talks about it, like me and other beings of the light who are giving an offering of what you can do to transcend the system within creating your own system. Because if you suddenly said it's evil and you just went somewhere in the caves and you didn't want to be a part of it, that is a part that you can choose that. And if that's your belief, you are free within that, and you can do that. And if you want to function within this world, and you still want to be supported within this world, and you want to share your messages in the world, and you're influencing other people through internet and everything like that, and you need gadgets and machines that we're still using now to get our messages across, to connect to people on the planet, you can't see that there's only evil in that. So you have to, in a way, find a way that transcends and builds the light structure within the functioning system, so we can build a new platform within it, but it's an illumined platform. So that's why I gave you this example of seeing that money is no longer just a force to enslave you to your basic needs, but bringing an aspect of life force partially, gradually, until you're more and more ready to function only on that level, more and more to that which advances life in a higher spiritual evolution and higher consciousness, which is a process. Okay, so these templates that were built for us, we always need to first master fully. That means no judgment. Until there's still judgment of even if money within you, you are not yet integrated. You have not yet awakened and integrated this illumined Christ within your nature. You are still judging, and when you judge, you become a part of that judgment, and that still has the power to manipulate you and to enslave you. Even though you don't use money, you are always still perhaps judging it, and it's always a part of your mental thoughts. And in a way, it will come out in a different venue of your life. So you see, we can't escape things. We have to witness and face them up front, and we have to build new structures and schemes. So there's a lot of people I see who are still saying that, and they're saying it's bad to charge for spiritual services or spiritual work. No one's charging. We're just saying, I'm a human being. I create with life force, and in this physical density structure we still hold now, in order for me to either be a part of it or not, I can, I'm not a light being now, I'm a physical human being, so I acknowledge that part. I don't perhaps like it to the fullest. It's not the highest truth I see. I know, I recognize it's not within the highest light, but I see that somehow we need to move through this process, because it was a collective co-creation. It was not just a part of those who've imprinted this system upon humanity. It's humanity who's also said yes, and they started using it. So there is no victimizer in a way when you transcend that. So what can you do to understand the higher flow of life force? You can start applying it also to the monetary or financial system, so there can be greater independent flow of life, so there can be greater circling of life force, which will free us, liberate us from within, because there is no construct from without that is influencing in truth us, who we are, and our actions and our choices. Until we master that, we are not ready for a galactic level, because we have to first, as always an illumined truth that I'm offered, is we need to master the concepts, the constructs, and the templates that we were given in this age. So we synthesize, we truly grow in our wisdom and knowledge, and then we can transcend, and then we build the new. That's how universal law works. But people want to escape this through judgment, and it's not going to happen. That's until we judge it, the money and the financial system that's corrupt, it will stay. When we embrace a higher aspect of, okay, how can we take this, but then with our own light force, with our own light work, how can we bring it to a higher level so that it can transcend naturally? Because you will see it, if you see money as dirty, even if you touch it, it's like, ugh, that's your view of it. You will constantly imbue these thoughts, the mental process. You will put that into the mental and emotional and physical strata of our planet. You will constantly imbue it with these thoughts that it's dirty, that it's bad, you will keep perpetuating the duality within its system. It's sustaining itself. So that's just one thing, and it's such a good example because it's a tangible teacher for many people. You can take money away from people, but if they're still holding that aspect of, that's mine, that's yours, you don't even need money to act this way. Money was actually enforced because people were already at that level of consciousness. Otherwise, it couldn't even root itself as a part of the system. It wouldn't be possible. I'm sorry to say that. So people always see one victim and perpetrator, and until that is playing out, you are not yet holding the light of illumination, and you're not yet ready to embody the cosmic Christ. It cannot overflow through you because there's so many barriers through which you need to dissolve as those layers of illusion so you can come into a higher consciousness. When you work gradually through template of light, through your I am presence, to illuminate the already existing structures, you are automatically becoming a light worker. A lot of people tell me, I don't think I'm a light worker. Someone recently asked me, but why am I still watching your videos? Well, maybe you think you're not, but maybe you are. That's the thing, because you always hold a certain mental idea of what something is supposed to be. You know, if you're already focused on the light, on the light, on the light, and calling it forth, you are already working with the light. So therefore, you are a light worker, period. It is so simple. We don't need to make it so complex. So, I want to now talk more about the nature of the Christ. And the seeding of the Christ on our planet went through the stages as much as the human consciousness was ready. So these, what we call these avatar processes or avatar embodiments, and there was not just one, there were many. There were kind of like consequent projects of the light that were coming gradually as much as the consciousness of the humankind was ready to accept. And a lot of it was distorted as well. But you cannot distort the seed that was planted. You can distort the external manifestations. But the seed of the Christ, and with the zero or the null time when the Jesus the Christ was embodied on the planet, when he was one of the beings of the avatar group and the illumined group here on that timeline, and that geomantic zone, he was planting the seed, and that seed reverberated through the planet and it was activated. So even though the physical teachings might have been distorted, the seed in itself, the illumined seed, can never be distorted. And that's the whole truth. So the human nature needed to develop the inner polarity of the feminine and masculine forces of creation as that vertical and horizontal pillar, which is the embodiment. It's the Gaia, it's the goddess, it's the embodiment of the goddess, it's the life force that's honored and reverenced as sacred. As life is not just a given, life is a gift. So in that way, until the heart of the Christ was born within man, we couldn't move into higher states. We couldn't, we wanted so badly to reach for the stars and be unified with our galactic roots and the stars, but we couldn't go there with not being ready, with not knowing the Christ within ourselves. So the Pleiades is one example as the heart of the galaxy, as the heart consciousness centering, and that consciousness being brought as a seed within the time of Jesus the Christ. It cannot develop as what we know as the second coming, which is within all humans who are ready, ready to embody and integrate this cosmic Christ. That's truly what it means. And the seed was planted. Now it's up to us to understand that. And for us to move into that state, we also need to have this walkthrough all that still we perceive as a barrier and what was enforced upon us, what was, what we were cursed to deal with, or was a mishap of the gods, or we were a miscreation of the gods and everything was fallen. In a way, the fall is a perspective, the fall from grace. But in a way, from the higher perspective, no one ever falls because the level of illumination as that seed never falls. So there's two perspectives, or looking at it from the worlds of creation or from Arnheim, are different. And we're starting to synthesize that until we are ready to understand what the seed of the cosmic Christ truly is. And we're going to walk through this book as well, because it's super cool. And I'm going to read you this most important statement, is that there is no coming. There is no second coming. That was a church diversion and manipulation. The second coming is Christ in the heart, releasing to heal the mother goddess, the Gaia herself. The return of the Christos was carefully planned for thousands of years. As a part of this process, the solar system gradually moved into balance so that it could align with the spiraling heart of the Milky Way galaxy. 0 AD, so the nulling point, was the precession shift into the heart when the gods returned to Earth to let go of the addiction to being gods. Egypt was the dimensional tunnel for the Syrian star teaching of 3600 BC. In 0 AD, the dimensional tunnel became Teotihuacan. In 2012 BC, Teotihuacan became the new home for the emerald records of our long evolution and new freedom. Later, in 0 AD, the records of Teotihuacan were greened by the birth of a star teacher into human form. Like chlorophyll in the cells, Christos initiated 2,000 years of growing, which is nearly finished. We're now at the synthesis point. Teotihuacan has released the truth about the true home of Christ in the heart, Gaia. It's us on Earth who are having this experience. Seers have long predicted great Earth shifts, volcanoes, earthquakes, tidal waves at this time. But actually, the real shift lies in the complete loss of power by the Vatican, which has caused society to become uncentered. The church state will collapse during a ceremony. The Roman lie is almost exposed, and that's the lie of that the second coming is a deity or the gods or someone that will save us, the rescuer. It doesn't exist, because as it's shared in many perspectives of people who are bringing forward the realms of illumination truth, no one can save us, because that universal Christ essence can only be developed from within. And one of the recent examples that I truly enjoyed was a sharing about the story of Jesus, his crucifixion, and his later enveloping of his disciples with light, of his light body and his ascended light body, and how they experienced this truth that we are this immortal essence of illumination. But when it was his time to ascend back into realms of illumination, these apostles felt the change. They felt they were no longer held within that light, so they needed to learn how to master and sustain that within themselves. So basically, the activation of our human compassion opens the gates to the cosmic heart. And that, when it's ready, Earth will start traveling more and more into the star realms, or this shifting of Earth melding with the galactic consciousness is going to become more and more evident. It's gonna penetrate our dimensional realm as a dimensional infusion, what I call the multidimensional ascension. This is what a multidimensional ascension is all about. And if you want to learn more, I have a multidimensional ascension course available on my page. But for now, I also wish to say that it is a precursor. So Nibiru, how I was shown, is playing this part of coming, taking the Syrian teachings, bringing it back to Earth. Of course, they themselves, because they were not illumined, have made many mistakes as well. They haven't always shared the truth about themselves. They haven't always been fair. They haven't always been upright, as is now still being reflected in the leaders of our world, who truly aren't real leaders, but these who are holding the power structures of, appearing to be leaders, appearing to be in the governmental systems of the planet. They're still reflecting those patterns, because they're not sharing the truth of everything they know, of everything that is happening on our planet with the rest of the people. They're not. So that's still reflected in our own behavior. So our melding part or process with these deities, what we perceive as deities, and many roles they've played and many roles we've played, is still many times coming from a perspective that's only one-sided. So in this book, there's a beautiful other side perspective when the Nibirians talk as well, when they share their own perspective and what they were learning through the earth cycles as well, because they had their own evolutionary process just as well. But when we are ready to let go of what our own one-sided vision is, we will move closer and closer into unity as a race of beings. We have to each resonate within the shamanic embrace of our own nature, of our human history, so we can start opening the galactic records as well. Because then again, there's also, like I said, there's an imprint of duality on the galactic levels as well. And there were galactic wars just as there were human wars. So once you still have the victim role within you, even though we move into the galactic system, it still plays out. It's still playing out because it's still within our consciousness. It's in the conscious memory. So we need to now take a stand to simply release this grip of victim-perpetrator duality. We were manipulated, we were lied to, we were distorted, and see our own part in it. So in this book, I really recommend it highly to everyone who wants to see the bigger picture of our human ancestry and moving into the heart of Christ through all the lives, through the different experiences, and to integrate themselves within the balancing and neutralizing and what I call the illumined polarities, so that the heart of Christ can truly be born within us as the seeds. So that happens when the stellar self is activated, and then this instant outpouring of the galactic light can start happening within our own human bodies, our own vessels. I'm going to walk you through some of the paragraphs in this book, but again, I want to ask you to contemplate on these things, to see how there's a bigger picture playing out, and that everything that was playing out on Earth was because it was allowed. everything that was played out was a collective lesson. And it was not just one side. It was not just people on Earth having lessons. There was also other beings within perhaps different planetary existences were having their own experiences as well. Until we make peace with that, there will be things coming and flooding into awareness that are just held at the record memory, that in a way will be more of a hindrance than actual stepping stone for greater clarity and illumination. I think in this book there was a beautiful example how once we make peace with certain aspects of life being elsewhere, one of the example was life on Mars, and us seeing the the structure of that face, on Mars, and then having our own memory back flooded with these war concepts and then the Orion Wars, and seeing how the aspect of that was played out there was an aspect where these beings actually, they said, we made a mistake. We went into the weaponization of space and using it for wars instead of exploring the nature of space and other beings and realms of existence. They say you don't have to make that same mistake, but we're right at the threshold of making it ourselves because we're also using the weaponization in space. So you see how it all aligns, and it's all about us. So the influence that we see and think these beings still have over us, it's held within the record memory. And in many times I've made one video about the history, and because someone asked me about the influence of archons, and I've already in that video shared that it's a memory basis of every human. And then I read it here, it's the same thing. You see, we all are getting the same information. That's how it is. So I want to walk you through some of the examples and readings, paragraphs from this book. It's really beautiful. It's also very deeply shamanic, representing the nature of seeing not just ourselves, our human evolution, but also the role of animals as totems and the animal wisdom, because through animal wisdom the stellar frequencies are being centered and they activate a certain archetypes within our body form. That's why the 12 signs of the zodiac are also animals, because they link us to the stars. So when you master the zodiac, you will kind of be seeing the bigger picture within what we call the fixed stars. So the solar and the stellar, seeing it as a one, because our sun is just one of the connectors within the bigger stellar system of worlds. So instead of going too deep, which we, in these topics like that, it's like an endless flow. I could just talk for hours here until sun would be no more. So, okay. The first thing I want to read here is when she started to have the experience of what we call the gods. And I'm only going to read the highlights, which are double highlights here in my book. The gods are not limited to the third dimension of fixed space and time as you are, but their experience with Earth is cyclical and limited by orbit. This is the law of the solar system. The gods are beholden to the laws of your solar system as well as the universe and galaxy, and you are the source of Earth connection. Beings born on Earth can know the Creator, the one God. You are the companions of the gods in the birthing laboratory of the solar system, but their cycle is so long and wise that you forget about them, your sky teachers. They long to have you remember their experience with you now. They are cosmically lonely while you desperately search for the memory of your communion with them when their cycle has brought them to Earth. When you truly accept all the phases of your evolution, then you will be prepared for their teachings about dimensions beyond the third. Know this as you hear the amazing story of your divine origins. The gods were once only spirit and you were once only matter. By their desire to know matter, the gods became spirit and matter while you became matter and spirit. First, you must remember the last 4 visitations to Earth by the gods, the 4 worlds of emergence before the 5th world of the Christos. They visit Earth in the third dimension every 3,600 years, and it is time now to remember the returns of 10,800 BC, 7,200 BC, 3,600 BC, and 0 AD. Your time has come because now is the revelation from the AD visit, 0 AD visit. If you can reattune to your divine experience, your sky memory, your teachers of synchronicity, your ancient mastery techniques of dimensional vectoring, then your heart will open to your true origins in 2013 AD. This was after the 2012. At that time, your solar system will reverse its motion and begin returning to the galactic center. So now I'm going to emphasize this real quick because it's quite a long read. But there's this there's this traveling of their own motion of their own world, and how they come from, how they were given Syrian teachings when they were visiting to the Sirius aspect, and then they coming to Earth, they were meant to integrate that within the Earth, but a lot of times it didn't go exactly as in the perfected plan. So in 2800 BC, the planet of the gods called Nibiru Marduk orbited as usual into the Earth's solar system. As soon as it entered, it caught in the time dynamics of the solar system. The planet normally functions on galactic time. Nibiru orbited in past Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, Saturn, Jupiter, the asteroid belt, and Mars, and then the Earth became visible. Panic ensued when the Nibirians saw that the poles of Earth had become encrusted with ice caused by the greenhouse effect from the pollution of Atlantean technology. So then time passed, and they saw Adama as an earth being, as the men and women of Earth were called, and it could become similar to the Nibirians and reduce their own loneliness. This evolved species thought of humans as no better than animals, so they saw them as the same, while the humans could never understand why the Nibirians did not admire the wisdom of the animals, which later they also needed to learn about. In horror, the Nibirians watched the Earth as their own large planet moved into position to cross the Earth's orbital path. Their planet began to pull on the gravitational balance of the Earth and its moon Maya. The Nibirians were utterly helpless. They were imprisoned by their own orbit, as anybody in the solar system would be, so their learning with the Earth began. The Earth wobbled and then shifted its poles 3 times. Almost all life on Earth and almost all of the structures built there by the Nibirians and the last vestiges of Atlantis, a civilization established there by the Andromeda Galaxy, were destroyed in this great cataclysm. A few hundred years later, the Nibirians returned from their orbit around the sun and landed on Earth. There were almost no structures left, but the amazing variety of species on Earth, including Adama, had survived and were existing in very primitive states of survival. There were also many changes in the genetic lines of the species because the pole shift had caused an invasion of cosmic rays into the atmosphere of Earth. As you know, cosmic rays carry the genes of species out into the inner heart of supernovas. Out of the supernova, as the new seeding happens always, so the photonic light. So Nibirians saw that Adama had no conscious memory of the cataclysm, but was now imprinted with an inner brain locus of paralyzing fear, which had activated the chakra, the solar plexus, which had previously accessed feelings for the goddess. So now it became a target for fear. So now I won't read all of this, but now later in 9000 BC, Nibirian traveled towards the star Sirius, right? Before they were actually preparing the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. And there was Osirian, which was the first temple of emergence of Adama after the cataclysm. And the structure was to be the temple of the Syrian teachings, and the sacred story of evolution of the gods and the species. So when they traveled back to Sirius, the great planet prepared to change direction and return to the sun. It was given the essential stellar teaching of the first phase, Sirius teaching 1 for Earth. So each time they traveled through that dimensional space, they received a teaching that they were meant to bring and integrate. But like I said, it wasn't always going perfectly because the world's a free world. That's what it happens. And there's learning involved. And that's basically until the cycle, right? It links, it interconnects with the karmic cycles on Earth, which is, it's not a structure that's the ultimate, because in ultimate we need to enter the spiraling nature, because now we were like cyclical, but we need to enter the spiraling state of ascension and evolution. So this teaching, Sirius teaching 1 for Earth, each person would receive these teachings through their own higher selves, how we receive through the I Am Presence. And it's just a knowing of that illumination. And the teaching 1 was, you will make a garden Eden so that you can begin to manifest the plant life forms of Earth. In exchange for the herbal teaching from Adama, you will teach him about the alchemical building stone and the elemental mastery of water control. You are to tell Adama that you are those who have walked with God, that you are the Enochians, or Enochians, I don't know. In 7200 BC, they return again. And it was a great project. They were excited. When they landed on Earth, Adama asked them, "Who are you?" "We are the priests of Enoch who have come to teach you new ways of wisdom," they replied. And Adama asked, "Are you the creator?" "No, we worship the central creative force of the universe manifested in spiraling life forms, but we are the teachers for Earth," they said. And Adama asked, "What is a priest?" And the Creator wept when the Nibirians set in motion the first lie of the 12 worlds. As you know, the 12 states of the zodiac relate to the 12 worlds, which means 12 states of evolution. So Anu, the leader, said, "A priest is one who walks with God and brings the news from God to your planet." Desire was created because Adama wanted to be a priest instead of finding God within their own heart. Okay, then they brought them certain plant forms, and they actually learned about from them, right? Like it was said. And Adama noticed, they noticed an increased level of, seeing the cycles, how they respond. If their cycle is 3,600 years old, because their DNA is Nibirian, certain life species or life forms they brought also held that structure. And one of the examples is the tree of life, the date tree. And then Adama said, well, they didn't want them to go. So they said, well, only the earth has a goddess. Perhaps you lie with her and you will never leave. So that's when they started to interbreed and create what was known as the demigods. And in that time, what was birthed was a worry, because, there was a worry that they could not experience that state again. Because there was this interbreeding brought this frequency of their own template, and it enmeshed within the earth template. So when the demigods were created, Enoch lived 1,000 years, and they, as Nibiru, went out to the stars again, and in 5400 BC received serious teaching too for Earth. You will honor Adama with your magical arts and divination skills when you return in 3600 BC, and you will learn the secrets of the animals from Adama. So again, you see, there was meant to be an exchange. As they came, hundreds of gods then came out down in spaceships, because they were again felt their desires, and that erotic desire birthed from that union, which was the union in flesh, but it wasn't yet integrated, you see, like we're doing it now in the state of the cosmic illumined union at this time, in this age. But they didn't see so much difference between humans and animals, so they started interbreeding and imbuing their template, their form, into the genetic structures and coding of animals too, so that we had now these different creatures. But then the story of Noah, right? How does it play in this picture? So the Godhead, head of God of Nibiru, Anu, was furious. He came closer to earth and saw the effects of this weird sexual practice. So with his great powers, he could easily see the atmosphere of earth with ions, so that rain would fall until the earth flooded. But he loved Adama, so he actually had a secret meeting with Noah, who was a descendant of Enoch. And he instructed him to gather a perfect male and female of each animal species to remain the pure, immaculate design. So they could release these pure species to populate the planet again after the flood. And this is the story, right? At this appropriate time. Nibiru then returned from its orbit around 3600 BC. The Nibirians landed and built temples in Sumeria, Egypt, India, and China. And since the glacial recession, Adama now lived in many places on Earth. They taught the people of the wisdom of the gods, which was now purified of desire. This time the gods did not mate with the priestess, but taught magical arts and tantric rituals to be conducted in the temple by earthlings. Eve was brought from Venus to the Garden of Eden, and she was taught that her lover was to be Adam. So because they were honoring these Syrian teachings, since, as you know, the temples was built in 10,800 as the Giza and the Sphinx. They in turn studied the animal totemic wisdom there with Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And that's why, in Egypt you have these animal imbued with the human form, these drawings, in the beautiful temples that were originally designed by Nibirians. Adama now had found that knowing power created evil. That's why you have this myth of Adam and Eve biting the apple, right? The knowledge, when you have knowledge, you can have power, and you can use it for either good or bad. So previously, this what was birthed then as anger, violence, and fear on earth has only been the behavior of the gods, and now we've imbued with that behavior as well. We've taken it on. So separation was totally in form, and all the structures needed to ensure its perpetuation were being developed. This was when the separation grip was at its highest point. So as we've said, first there was desire, then it was worry, then it was anger, violence, and fear. These were all integrated through the intermingling process of the earthlings and the gods. So when the gods saw that Adama doing things they disliked in themselves, they decided to save Adama as a mirror image in which they could see themselves. reflection, right? Narcissism also began and would end only when Adama was free. Anu made the first covenant with Noah, called the Noahic covenant. The Lord would never flood the earth again because he loved Adama. But the gods panicked at their gift of magic and divination because they thought Adama would use this power against them when the opportunity arose, because they were initiating them into the magic arts. They returned to their original lie, which was that they were the link to the god, and they thought Adama to set up a temple hierarchy. This was when the priesthood began. From there on, the power would be in the hands of consecrated priests only and priestesses, and in the hands of kings who possessed the blood of the gods in their veins. Mistrust and distrust, of course, was created. So this, as you see, it was like levels of different archetypes that was developed. The Nibirians left as a great cry went up in the temples on planet Earth, but the priests were not unhappy to see their lords leave. As for the gods, when they saw Earth from space, the realization came that they had made a grave error. They had not fully trusted Adama with the Syrian gift. The Nibirians had violated the divine giveaway. It was now time for all Earthlings to be linked to the gods by means of astrology, tarot, and all other forms of magic and divination. But the gods reserved these teachings for the priesthood, who would then use this ability to control other Earthlings. The Creator observed this and decided that it was time for Earth to be free. When the third teaching was received from Sirius, even the gods were amazed. Sirius' teaching 3 for Earth was, Adama now has tasted of good and evil through free will, but he can only know of divinity if granted free will. So you see, free will can only be mastered on Earth by utilization of magic and divination, which involve the ability to be on Earth and in other dimensions simultaneously. By giving away the secrets of the divine, you can be freed from your original lie, which first separated me from my children of Earth. You will do this by assisting in the birth of the Son of the Source, the Creator on Earth. Then Earth will transcend duality over time, for Nibiru will no longer be separate from the solar logos when Earth is the equal of the gods. So the return of Nibiru was meant for 0 AD. And when there was total trust in the Creator, the story and the continuation of Emerald records could be received. And I love this saying here to the person who was receiving this initiation, that being unable to proceed is not your fault, for your whole civilization had ceased to trust. So you see, it was a collective creation. It was a co-creation of the collective. The records were transferred to a new land so that the third Syrian teaching could be given to your planet. Someday it would be known to trust of the new land when the old world releases the desire to be the birthplace of the only God. And we still experience that through many religions. So as you can see, each time there was a little bit of the distortion. So the first time they said, well, we are the ones who are bringing you these messages. We are your intermediaries. Then what was created through the interbreeding process also brought the experiences, because then the actual physical melding with them was created, right? So first they set up the temples, then they set up their appearance, then in the mental structures, and then they went more and more in the physical strata of earthings and Earth, which was bringing through many different creations as a result. And now I want to move through some of the things that I have marked with a double mark so that I can read them to you as well, because there's like, I really advise you this book. There's just so much information. When I read this book, it's truly slowly because there's so much information. What's really important here, as one saying, is that our ability to love our own pain and our own pleasure with enlightenment is what honors our experience and makes every experience into a teaching. You see one example I gave before about the money. There is no victimization process. There needs to be love for every form that was ever developed on Earth if you truly want to bring forth the patterns of light and immaculate perfection. When all resistance, all fear or hatred of darkness is removed, then the light may move through us completely, creating the luminous form that is the immortal, what is it called? Diaphanous life form? I don't know this word, I'm sorry. But that's the thing. So many people have hatred for the gods, the demigods, the rulers, the so-called rulers of our planet, instead of loving them, really loving them as what Patricia calls the recalcitrant souls, who are basically just not willing to wake up to the light. And I've recently gotten this beautiful, beautiful mantra and the creed that works miracles when I do my own light work. And I use it for either when chemtrails are coming, and it's working miracles, truly. or when any sort of patterns of light are moving into and dissolving that which we perceive as darkness. And it's very simple. It's what Spirit recently showed me. I just put my hand on my heart, or not, and I just really repeat it either out loud or silently as I'm available in the moment. And it's based on the activating of the I am, which is the highest light we can basically emanate, we can illuminate with. And in this light, we are powerful beyond measure. And it goes, in the name of I am a reflector, exposing darkness to the light, so that the sun's infinite light can shine so bright. And the sun is just the solar representation of this light, which expands further on, and then you can proceed in the same way by replacing the word with source and saying, in the name of I am a reflector, exposing darkness to the light, so that the source infinite light can shine so bright. Snow is falling from the roof. That's why I'm getting like this from time to time. The ability to impose their will was destroyed by Christos, the new order. They have no power in the cosmos now except where they exist in the minds of men and women. This is the ego, which is the grip of belief systems and judgments coming from memory. So I've said many times, the ideas we have of these rulers or dark lords or archons, whatever, a lot of it is memory, because in many of their own collective learning, they've learned the lessons as well. But we're still holding grip ourselves. So it's very enlightened to ask, well, where's the grip? Where's the holding of this old structure still coming from? Because you have to penetrate deep into the cosmic consciousness to see a higher picture, to see a bigger level perspective. So let's continue reading some of the facets which I have underlined here. The destruction of all species would totally eliminate the possibility of stellar communion, which is the chance to know our Earth story from the beginning of time. Our story is the multifaceted expression of creation from the beginning of time, and that's not human time as in linear time, but it's the galactic time and how Earth cycles link into greater galactic cycles. And this is something that only through raising our consciousness we can come into with these initiations. That there's other interesting parts too. So this is now when these so-called gods come in and they offer their perspective. I'm going to read some of these passages because I thought they were really beautiful. We connected with your passage to other dimensions through the solar force because that is how we maintain our conscious contact with Earth. If we lose our conscious contact with Earth, we lose our sharing in the story of Earth. We are the abode of the gods, the solar logos, the teachers of Earth, the brotherhood and sisterhood of creation. Your legends of the ancient days are the story of our eternal return to Earth. We are the protectors of seeds, animals, the genetic strains of all life in the solar system, including the genetic strains of humans. We store new seeds grown on your planet, and we do this to guard your planet. Because of us, you may have animals and different kinds of plants on your planet. Because of our care and genetic breeding, you're able to evolve. We are your teachers about alchemy changing form. Our project in the solar system is to develop plant and animal species. Earth is the greenhouse, and our planet is cold with little water. We are highly developed in the mineral kingdom and in the mental dimension. We are the source of morphogenetic fields in the solar system. Living things exist here in the underground laboratories in storage. Our seeds grow into plants and trees on Earth, and we get seeds back from Earth whenever we return. Earth's atmosphere is superior to ours. 1 year here is equal to 3,600 years on Earth. The orbital cyclical influence is the key to dimensionality, since beings in this solar system age according to the time cycles of their own location. If we come to Earth, we age at your rate, so we rarely stay long. When we come home, we age normally, but when one of us returns to Earth, you are shocked to see that a teacher such as Thoth, Enoch, Isis, or Khnum is still young. The ancient Earth legends about people living 1,000 years come from our people visiting Earth, and the stories about Earth people going to sleep and waking up still young after hundreds of years have passed are true accounts of Earthlings who came and spent time here. We have access to your world through time warps such as Avalon. You will be the beginning of the great legend when you return to Earth, as the one who speaks. All evolution is dimensionality in relation to time, and your dimensional perceptual skills will mutate exponentially if you can absorb our teaching for you. Mastery of the cosmos is attained by any creature that can travel through space and time at will, recognizing its participation in creation in an eternal existence with no beginning or end. This is your initiation, and you will give it back to Earth. And they also say their role as that we are the Akashic records of Earth because ours is the longest cycle in the solar system. The Akashic records are the records of emotional growth of the soul over many lifetimes, and the key into them is the moon, which rules the emotions. Since 3,600 years on Earth is equal to 1 year here, our physical needs are minuscule in comparison to yours. This fact is the key to future transmutation of the entrapment of physical desires on Earth. A time will come on Earth when you will be faced with consuming yourselves. Then you will learn that wants and needs are all functions of consciousness, and you will discover that you can manifest wants and needs mentally instead of emotionally. Our genetic and chemical technology is very advanced, but we have made mistakes because the universe is a place of experimentation and free will. Choice exists to offer the hope to all beings to choose the Creator. Your memory of us is negative because of our dimensional difference. For example, we decided to see if we could improve the genetic stream of humans by breeding ourselves with animals and then breeding ourselves on Earth. The idea was that a woman could have the courage of the jaguar, or man could attain the frequency range of the dolphin. We were strong. We were impressed by the magnificent formation power of the third dimension, since we are fourth dimensional and not in material form. We try to meld second dimensional qualities, animal existential expression, into humanity, and we learn that all dimensions are equal but different. We now understand that diversity is the key to survival, which you have not yet realized. They also later it is shared that they had to learn about the state of the dream time and this inner planes, so they could also liberate themselves in their perspectives. And this was a part of this Christed integration as well. So these issues we're living through and re-exploring over and over again by time traveling into past lives until the lesson is mastered. There are certain truths to be learned by all souls in the midst of the time developmental universe. Time will cease as we understand time once the lessons are learned. Time is simply a device which is useful for consciousness in the third dimension, but then when you move out of that dimension, like I said, there's a spiral of evolution that is anchored into the sphere of Earth, which was also happening for our planet at the time of the cosmic convergence in 1987. And it was when the Earth, by the company of heaven and through the general efforts of many beings of the light, was lifted into this spiral of creation and the spiral of ascending reality. Let's see what else. The point, which point? Oh yeah, what's happening now with a lot of our technological things we're experiencing, this is called the point of the dark before the dawn, because individuals were experimenting with what consciousness truly is. And it talks about channeling instead of being in our own power as well, being in our higher self and activating our own cosmic universal self. If the lessons from Sirius are going to be available for Earth, you must become conscious about your evolution by learning to clear the emotional body and by training your brain for multidimensional access. So we hold all these holograms for Earth learning because they have all the holograms of the imprints of our experiences there. But such holding of energy may be making it harder for you to do it yourselves. Let go of the belief that we will do it for you because universal knowledge is within you waiting to be tapped. There is a faster way. If you can learn to attune to star forms, especially to Sirius, then the laboratory forms can go. So the records will be dissolved. And this is when we will let go of our identities, let go of the archaic method of keeping in touch. When you remember us, you will be released from your subliminal need, your tiresome obsession with fame, and needing to belong, to search for something outside of us, resulting from having lost touch with the divine. Our reality and truth is much more fascinating. Earthlings and Nibirians each have skills and qualities which others do not have. Nibirians are masters at manipulating time and distance because they travel so far for so long, and yet we Earthlings are the masters of bringing those energies into form and time and place on Earth. So when we do that, they are linked to us, which grounds them into the greenhouse, and then we experience a greater frequency range, which frees us from the oppressive narrowness of incarnation. When earthlings do ceremony at certain times, at certain sacred sites, within the portal places, the vertical axis is made, and we're in ecstatic communion. And I love this saying, which says, meanwhile, the cosmic joke is that there will be no apocalypse, no cataclysm, and no end times, because we have this perpetual notion to, like this what's called the catastrophophobia consciousness, when from this old record memory, we keep expecting something to happen and to end, but the time is cyclical. Creation is constantly expanding, and this needs to be realized for humans. So instead, each individual will have to clear his or her emotional body and create an environment which reflects the ecstasy of the divine human and a medicine wheel of animals. Until you remember that you return again and again to Earth, you will continue to search for a beginning and an end. You have experienced our return as a crossing, a periodic cataclysm in the solar system. But the electron does not destabilize the molecule. The molecule is a unit of balance. When you go into balance and understand the eternal return, then you will see that Christos brought in the new order, a balanced solar system with our last return at the incarnation. So these were these end times. And let's see if there's more. There's so much more. I could just read on. I could read you the whole book. Should we do a video where I do the whole book? So I love this about the Christos and what was the true purpose at that time, in that activation. So when Christos saw the status of Earth, he activated a great teaching about the healing heart. He thought that love was the natural state of the human soul. The Earth field shifted because a few were able to hear the truth, and the few disciples whom Christos initiated protected the heart. But we toned down the cosmic connection at Teotihuacan because the addiction to power and control would be lived out through the 13 heavens and 9 hells. We would be caught in the cycles of history until each human sought Christos in their own heart. Simply put, the change could only come through each human who chose to love. Next, the eternally patient planet, the goddess, Gaia herself, would outwardly mirror, that's really important, the pain of humans so that each person could see an analog reflected by the condition of the planet itself. That would be the extreme sacrifice of Gaia, the true story of the cross, which was covered up. Christos suffering with the planet, not for the planet. So for the planet in ecological crisis cannot offer sanctuary to the divine Son, which means to us as children, as sons and daughters of God. Humans were freed by Christos, but the Roman Church methodically destroyed all sources containing the true teaching. And like I said, that's just on the outside. But the seed was developed and it lived on. The return, we've already read that about the second coming, and I think we've came to the conclusion of today's reading part. It's a lot to digest, I believe, for many beings, because many beings see everything as a one-sided connection, and there's always a victim and perpetrator when we see within the eyes of duality. So when we see with the eyes of the cosmic universal consciousness, we see that everything that is influencing a strata, a sphere of each world. So the worlds intermingling, even when we see it from the galactic level where galaxies are coming together and they're fusing their consciousness, is having that experience because it is meant to have that experience. So all the points of darkness were also points of integration, and the points of light were points of activation, and there was always this symbiotic relationship between the two. So the cosmic Christ is truly not an external process, and even nowadays we don't have one avatar being returning, but we have many beings of the light, beings of different realms, ET beings who are here to complete their processes. They're bringing their own stellar wisdom. They're bringing the wisdom that they've had within their own integration of their own Christed experiences, as the Christ at the 0 AD opened the floodgates of also higher heart stellar connections to incarnate on the planet as well. So like they said here in the book, we had incarnations from, let's say, Sirius, or we had incarnations from Orion, but never from Pleiades before. So that was the lineage that at that time was establishing the link, the stellar link. So the activation of our stellar self opens the gates to the galactic consciousness. And if you want to learn more, if you feel you're on that level, You can take my Galactic Human Embodiment and Planetary Service course. It's a part of my self-mastery training tools. And I'm now in the midst of really finalizing the final touches of the Cosmic Union and Universal Consciousness course that will be actually the completing or the concluding video of the series. It will be the so-called 13th octave. You know, that's always the synthesis point of what truly is this Cosmic Christ, Cosmic Union and Universal Consciousness, which we can only birth ourselves into. And that's it. That's very simple. It's very profound. It's very deep. Do the research. I recommend this book to everyone. It was a pleasure sitting with you and the book here today. If you want to learn more, you can find much and many tools and resources on my page. As always, with so much love, dedication, and devotion, wisdom, and power from my own heart of the Christ. And I hope the mic works. I'll talk to you again very soon. Stay blissful, stay radiant, and especially stay aware. Bye-bye for now. And now, in this activation of the light and our heartfelt intent, as humans walking the path of the Cosmic Christ, we are ready to see and feel the bigger picture of the cosmic heart of the Christ integration within our human nature. We recognize both the feminine goddess and the masculine God principle within us, and by internalizing, integrating, and embodying our inner polarities, we also see the external teachers that played a role in this integration process. And in this nature, in this facet of being, we are ready, through the purified light of the sacred violet fire, the pink flame of the mother's love and the blue flame of the father's power, we activate the golden flame of the inner Christ, the cosmic Christ, which sees the beauty and perfection of life in all and everything, in accordance to divine will and the perfection of all. And in that space there is no more judgment for evil, for extreme patterns of duality. And in this higher perspective, we're willing to see every planetary exchange and every human exchange with every other aspect of creation simply as a teacher. And also as, in one example, Nibiru played a role initiating us as humans as a teacher. We also accept our sacred responsibility for the teacher within. And as that teacher within us rises, it activates the flame of purity, of higher understanding of this integration process, including all of its stages, phases of development and evolution. And by embracing everything through this vision of perfection, we also embrace the stand for all those who do yet not see this higher perspective, whose hearts are still entrapped within the egoic illusion of separation, manipulation, and distortion, creating a reality that is false, and not embracing the perfection of the sacred masculine and feminine forces of creation, and all the greater cycles within the galactic nature and proportion that we are now instigating and opening ourselves to, so that not only our own inner human Christ nature is developed, but that we also take a stand within the galactic and the cosmic Christ nature of our being. And we can only do so and enter through the gates of disinitiation by holding no more judgment for any pattern, even of the most inexplicable duality and separation, that it played its part in the grand scheme of things. And by embracing our neutral stand, we activate our hearts into the nature of the cosmic Christ. And we're willing to take a stand for all those who do not yet have the awareness to integrate that higher knowledge into their human awareness, and transmuting their egoic personalities into the ascending or the ascendant persona of our Christed flame nature, our true nature of beingness. And so, in this devotion, we now affirm, I am that I am, and in the name of my I am presence, I liberate all aspects of myself that still hold judgment, not only for the roles and patterns played out within my own life and reality throughout many lifetimes, but also neutralizing the polarity of duality construct playing out within the greater picture and holding judgment over any of those facets of creation, so that even the nature of what we perceive as the fallen returns to its true nature of source, origin, and immaculate conception of patterns of perfection. I now stand fully naked, without any preconceived notions over anything, so that this higher perspective can take a stand and rise within my being. For without any preconceived notions, self-assumptions, conclusions based on egoic notions, I stand free and liberated, and only then can this higher picture, the bigger perspective, the grand divine design, the plan of perfection be revealed upon me, entrusted upon me, to be embodied and held within the flame of my sacred heart as I take a stand within all my brothers and sisters of the light on this planet and beyond, becoming the full light of neutralizing force field of divine love, transfiguring flame of divine love that transfigures or deeply alchemizes my own being, affecting the way I think, the way I act, the way I reflect that light back to others, so that I may truly be a gateway for the cosmic Christ on earth and Gaia herself. So be it, and so it is.